Now let's further enrich our perspectives and explore some of the issues covered on the program today with our guest contributor who brings his depth and breadth of analysis to the subject matter. And today we have Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmud Jega. Great to see you, Mahmud.
Thank you very much.
You're becoming a bit of a rare sight these days, so when we see you, we are actually quite glad.
Well,
what's your assessment of the points laid out by our earlier guest, Danwanangu, with regard to the crisis in Rivers State?
He very, very forcefully laid out the case from the perspective of Governor Simi Fubara. I'm sure there are people who will lay out a very forceful case for the other side, but a lot of what he said is probably true. The summary of it was what he said about you don't sell your goat and continue to hold on to the rope.
Yeah.
You have to allow the guy who bought the goat to drag the rope home, which is saying that, okay, Mr. Wike was governor for 8 years. He has finished. He should let go because a new governor was elected. Who put him there or what is not the issue now. The Constitution only recognizes the guy who got the certificate of return, and he inherits all the constitutional powers of a governor. Well, that is very true. Although, of course, still you can't prevent the politics. The State Assembly, there is a lot of politics in there. And so he made a very good case. I think most of it is true. The only thing is that the Constitution cannot protect you from some political troubles. You have to find a way, really.
Absolutely. What about his suggestion that Mr. Wike is planning to run against President Tinubu in 2027? And in his words, at that press conference he's held, that he's planning to betray the president. How do you read that suggestion?
Well, I'm not surprised that the Fubara side will say that, because obviously it will be a big strategic advantage if they can get the FCT minister to collide with the president and probably be thrown out of the FCT ministry and the cabinet, because after that he will not be able to sustain the fight in Rivers. But my own thinking is that ultimately Mr. Wike is headed for APC. Those 27 members of the Rivers Assembly who announced, without thinking very carefully about the implications, that they had resigned from PDP and were going to APC, must have done so in consultation with him, because he is clearly their leader. And not only them, many commissioners in Fubara's cabinet also wrote and resigned, and many members of the state PDP executive are also clearly in league with APC. So my own feeling is that Mr. Wike is headed for APC. But before he goes, and he's not the only one, you know, in politics in Nigeria we do that kind of thing. He must wreck PDP or inflict as much damage as he could there, because that will make him more vulnerable when he comes to APC. Many people do that. Probably nobody has done it like to the extent that he has, you know, to have one leg in this party and even control the National Executive Committee of PDP. Maybe nobody went that far. The last time I remember something like this happened was when Alimadu Sharif was chairman of PDP, and they wanted to remove him, and it looked like he wanted to create as much confusion as he could before he left. And it was, Wike was also involved in there because he had a hand in making him. So that is my own feeling. Otherwise, I don't really see him running against President Tinubu. I'm sure he wants to be president. He has made that very clear. But it will be a very dicey thing to do.
I mean, he would, unless, I mean, President Tinubu makes some spectacular mistakes from within his own party as well. I mean, it would seem like an impossible task, really.
It might seem like that. I mean, it's good
I mean,
enough.
he might decide to run, but I mean, running is one thing. Dislodging the person who's there is
another.
Yeah.
And in any case, I mean, being minister of the FCT is a very, as we say in Nigeria, juicy position. You are governor of a huge state like Rivers for 8 years. You can be FCT minister, which is also a governor for another 4 or even
That's what it
years.
amounts to.
Yeah, that's what it amounts to.
Although it's an appointed governor rather than
well,
an
it's
executive
appointed,
governor.
but it's in charge of a territory.
Very interesting. But it seems, though, that the cost of this crisis seems to be going up rather than down.
Yeah, because both sides are digging in and they are roping in everybody else into it, including, most unfortunately, the judiciary. And sometimes you don't even know where matters lie. This one goes to this court, they go to Court of Appeal. It throws the matter back, very confusing.
Yeah.
And this could go on virtually forever.
Absolutely.
Some will now go to Supreme Court and possibly come back again, you know, like that. So meanwhile, one can imagine that governance in River State is at a complete standstill.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But it seems, though, if there's any, I suppose, anything that one can glean from what is going on beyond the chaos, I mean, it seems to be fostering this growing sense of political community in Rivers State and beyond, bringing people together with calls for support for the existing constitutional order, namely the seat of the governor.
Every time there was a crisis in Nigeria between a sitting governor and a godfather, public feeling all across Nigeria was with the governor. Exactly. Right. I think the first time we had that was in Anambra State, when the governor, this former minister, his name has escaped me, the governor who came after Mbadiniju.
Right.
He was said by the godfather, Uba, to have signed a post-dated resignation letter that he was taken to Okija Shrine.
And you're talking about the former Labour minister.
Yeah, the former Labour minister, Dr. Ngige.
Dr. Ngige,
That time, everybody in Nigeria, I mean, not everybody, but most people were appalled. Now, what is this? I mean, this man has been elected governor. You take him to a shrine, you are holding a paper and say he has signed a post-dated resignation letter. What kind of, I mean,
extraordinary.
From media comments and everything, the sympathy was with him. Now, of course, there were many, many other conflicts in several other states between governors and godfathers. And almost everywhere, Nigerians thought, look, if this guy was elected the governor, no matter that politically you are the one who installed him in there, but he is the governor now. And the constitutional powers of the governor are very clear. And
they lie with him.
They lie with him.
Not
and the
with
Constitution
you.
didn't say he should share them with a godfather or anybody. Yes.
Do you get the sense, though, when you talked about that public mood and public sentiment that always seems to be with the governor, the incumbent governor? Do you get the sense that a significant portion of that sense of community and solidarity seems to be aimed against the judiciary and the federal government in the case of Rivers State, for example, with people wondering how long this crisis needs to continue and how come the powers that be seem unable to stop it from festering ever deeper?
Well, you know, initially, as you said, when you were discussing with the guest, the president intervened. Some were even saying his intervention was unconstitutional and this and that. No. The president is the father of the country, and he cannot allow a crisis like that to fester. And to some extent, he was even-handed about it, because he saved the governor from immediate impeachment at the time, because he realized the critical situation of Rivers State, and that if you allow this situation to degenerate into violence, it will disrupt, at the minimum, apart from loss of lives, it could disrupt oil production. And already the government has serious problems with its finances. And if some people begin to block the oil flow stations, then the crisis will be multiplied. So the president intervened. However, it looks like the intervention didn't, not just look like, the intervention didn't solve the problem on a permanent basis. It is still rearing its head. Possibly at some point the president will say, okay, if you are not resorting to violence, if it is going to court, that's okay, that's constitutional, that's legal. Can't stop people from going to court. The only danger is that from the courts, it may still spill into the streets and result in violence, like the allegation that a bomb went off when members were visiting, and then police sealed local government secretariats, and then people were demonstrating. You see, all those kinds of things.
It's interesting that we haven't heard anything more about that bomb that allegedly blew off somebody's hand. I mean,
the governor said so, I think yesterday also, that the police have still not brought a report, but you remember.
Well, because you would think that the police by now would have been saying something about it and
but you remember,
allaying concerns and fears.
When you hosted here on this program, a madam from River, I think she's the publisher of
Yes.
She was virtually doubting whether any
she was
bomb
saying, well, did a bomb actually go off? Yeah. But I mean, do you think that after all this, especially after that attempt, that political attempt by the president to try and sort of resolve the crisis, that actually saved the position of the governor and strengthened his hand?
It did, temporarily.
Yeah.
Temporarily.
But he's built on that, hasn't he? I mean, he's made himself much stronger now.
Quite possibly the president
and much more assertive.
He did, and he has gained more confidence.
But
because quite possibly the president also told the FCT minister to take it easy, because he has stopped going there in a grand manner. But his people are still fighting. And of course, the biggest danger for the governor is if those 27 pro-Wike state assembly
are ever reinstated.
Of course, as you saw a few days ago, they said they had been reinstated by the Court of Appeal, that the governor should bring back the budget, because the budget that was passed by the 3 members is null and void. They should now bring. Now, if he makes that mistake and brings back the budget to him, the next stage may be impeachment, because that means he has recognized their legality.
That's an important point to make. And all those court cases, of course, swirling around River State, the latest one, the appeals court ruling that we mentioned, that seemed to favor the Amaewule faction of the River State House of Assembly. And soon after that, another one emerged, preventing the chief judge from recognizing Mr. Amaewule and his 26 other colleagues. I mean, and this, of course, in addition to all the other cases that are pending in various courts. I mean, when does all this start to lose legitimacy? And should it now all come together with some finality under one Supreme Court judgment? Is that the way to end the confusion?
Unfortunately, the Supreme Court cannot weigh in until somebody goes to
the process.
Appeal. You have to follow. You see, whenever we have a major political crisis in Nigeria, you find that the judiciary gets sucked in and begins to issue contradictory orders. The same thing happened in Kogi State. The same thing is happening in Kano State, in Rivers. I remember during the June 12th crisis, when the FCT High Court nullified the election on the grounds that there was an injunction, and the NEC ignored it and held the election. About 8 high courts in Lagos, in Benin, in Ibadan, and everywhere were issuing orders that INEC must go ahead. And I remember that time we went to see the retired appeal court president, Justice Mahmud Nasir. He said, what kind of judges are we? You heard on the radio that the FCT High Court issued an order. You are a Lagos High Court judge. You issue a contradictory order. How can, if you want to help the situation, advise the parties to go to the Court of Appeal? That is the responsible thing to do, but not to be obtaining court orders, different contradictory ones from courts of the same jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But whenever we have a major political crisis, that is exactly what happens. It is happening right now in Kogi, in Kano,
That is
and
true.
in Rivers.
That is true.
Yes.
So what do you think will be the best way to resolve this crisis?
How? Honestly, I think the president will have to intervene again. I mean, he's the only one I can think of who has the necessary authority. The elders in Rivers State took sides with the governor, I said the former governors. So therefore, obviously, they cannot play a broker role because the Wike faction will never listen to them. It is the president who is in a unique position because he can easily call Wike, who is his minister, and also the governor, and try to work out something. What is it that he will work out is the tricky
that
part.
would be the, and I doubt if the governor, having been through it once,
May not want to.
yeah, he may be less reluctant because he, as you said, he's much more confident of his position now, and he knows that if he does not remove every vestige of Wike's influence, he will never be able to sleep with both eyes closed.
That is true, but on the other hand, can he do it? Because he should be realistic about it. Unfortunately, when you have supporters and advisors like Mr. Danwanangu, who was here earlier, they may encourage you to take a very hard, uncompromising line. And that may not be the best.
Yeah.
That may not be the best.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But let's turn briefly to the issue of farmer-herder clashes. A story breaking tonight. I mean, so many lives, of course, lost as a result of those clashes. But today, the presidency announced the creation of a federal Ministry of Livestock Development. Details are sketchy, but we know that a presidential committee on livestock reform has also been formed. President Tinubu will be its chair, and your brother, Professor Tahiru Jega, former chairman of the Electoral Commission, INEC, will be his deputy. Has that sunk in yet?
I'm just hearing that. I know there was inauguration and I read about the creation of the ministry, but I didn't see the composition. Well, I think Professor Jega was taken into it because towards the end of Abdullahi Ganduje's term as governor in Kano, he appointed a committee headed by him which studied this problem. And obviously, livestock development is a very serious matter in Nigeria, not just because we are losing lives and there's so much conflict, many people in IDP camps. The livestock herds that we have in Nigeria are one of our biggest assets because without them, we will be importing beef from Brazil and Argentina and Australia, and it will be very, very expensive because beef is an expensive commodity. However, it is very important to make these studies and work out what is the best way in which we can maintain our livestock herds, improve our production, and prevent conflict with the farmers.
Because I imagine ranching and all that will come under this, modernizing the sector.
That is what
but of course, the new Ministry of Livestock Development means the appointment of new ministers. You know, because now you've got a new Ministry of Livestock, and at least two of them, you know, which further expands government, and at a time when there are calls for government to be reduced. I mean, there is already a Ministry of Agriculture.
It is true. I mean, when this creation of a new ministry was announced, many people thought, look, we already have the largest cabinet in Nigeria's history. But personally, I think it does not necessarily mean a new minister has to be appointed. There are a lot of ministers of state, including one in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock as it is now. So the cheapest way to do it probably is for the president to upgrade one of the ministers of state to become the minister. But many people will argue that you don't really need a full-fledged ministry. at the federal level.
Especially when you've also appointed a livestock
Committee.
Yeah, development committee. I mean,
I thought that committee would have been enough, probably
Absolutely.
working under the Ministry of Agriculture. But it's okay. The president knows some things that we don't know.
well, we hope it'll make a difference. Positive direction. But Mahmud, brilliant to have you here and to have the benefit of your analysis. Mahmud Jega is a Rise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper. Good to see you again. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for all.